Ladies and gentlemen, we are counting down. We are now 3 rounds away from finding 2 more players that qualify for the 2026 candidates. It is round 9 of the FIDE Grand Swiss, and things are heating up. It is getting ridiculous. We thought we had clear leaders, but they were only half a point ahead, and they may have just been reined in, and the field may have opened. Today's going to be an interesting video because I'm only covering the top 5 boards. Now, this is not to say that players outside of these boards won't win, but this is where all the drama is, and this is where kind of the players who are leading are playing. It's gotten to the stage now where if you are not in those like top 5 or 6 boards, you're probably not going to win. You're hoping to go perfect score, and you're hoping for some miracles at the top boards. So only the top 5 boards today, and that means we start off with board 5. Hans Nieman versus Abhimanyu Mishra, the battle of the Americans, and it was a very interesting battle indeed. Now, Abhimanyu Mishra is going into this on a 64-game unbeaten run. Hans Nieman would love nothing more than to end it, and he goes for move 3 h4. I nearly fell out of my chair when I saw this. So quite clearly, Abhimanyu was setting up for like a King's Indian or a Grundfeld. So if, for example, in this position Hans had played knight to f3, we could have seen a Grundfeld with d5. We could also have just seen a King's Indian with here, and then e4, and then something like d6. This is what we could have seen. I've got videos on both of those. Hans Nieman just rewrites the rules of chess, basically, and plays h4. And he goes for an early attack. We do get now d5, so like a neo-Grundfeld, cd5, and c5. Look at that. This must be some prep. So c takes d5. Normally in the Grundfeld, you get this, and then e4. And there's a knight to capture here, but that's not there. So you have to play this interesting move after c takes d5. You have to play c5. And this is obviously some prep. D takes c6 en passant, and now knight takes c6. So black has sacrificed the pawn, but is getting very quick development. They've got their 3 pieces. They are move away from castles. White is still asleep in the bunkers. They've got 1 horse out. Knight to c3, short castles. Now you have to play e3, bishop to f5, bishop to d2, a6. We're just ignoring this pawn for now on h4. Rook c1, sensible move. Rook to c8, bishop to e2, rook e8. Normal game so far. Hans Nieman just has a pawn on h4 and his upper pawn. Knight to g5 though. Don't know what that does exactly. You are obviously bringing your knight forward. You're opening this bishop. You are potentially preparing g4. That is probably the main idea. Abhimanyu not afraid. He plays the best move, e5. If you're about to be attacked on the side, you strike back in the center. g4 comes. Bishop to d7. Now d5, closing everything down. Knight to d4. Look at that move. Look at that. You might say, what? That's just a loss of a knight. E takes d4 is devastating because this is open. This is under attack. The knight's coming in. The bishop's coming in. The rooks are down the board. Your king's still in the middle of the board. So a beautiful knight sacrifice that you just can't take. So we get f3. Now knight takes e2, queen takes e2, and just h6, kicking the knight back to e4, and we get the trade. And then rook takes c1, check. Bishop takes c1. It seems like Abhimanyu Mishra has got through Hans Nieman's attack. He is still down a pawn, but he's got the compensation. He's going to get through. Queen to a5, queen d2, and queen takes a2. We've got the pawn back. At 0-0-0s, he has leveled the game completely, beautifully handled, and now we will transition seamlessly into a draw. You would think, but there's still g5 on the board. And even though you seal everything with h5, I've also got b4. Hans Nieman is going to play this as aggressively as he can to try and win. Hans Nieman is playing this for a win. Let's not doubt this. He would love nothing more than to be the person to beat Abhimanyu Mishra, and he wants to qualify for the candidates. B takes a5, and here he makes a bold decision. He plays queen takes a5. which is an interesting move. Obviously, you leave your bishop to hang, but you also attack the rook. So black has to play something like rook b8, and now you can play bishop to c3. So Hans Niemann's up a pawn again. The problem is, this is his best asset, which has to go through, but it's kind of easily blockaded, and the king's a bit weak. The black king's also a bit weak, but it always has kind of escape squares. Rook c8. Now we pin the bishop. e4. Bishop f8. Beautiful move. Bishop to d2 now, inviting a rook trade, which is what we get. But we also get bishop b5. And black is creating counterplay on the white king. Bishop to d2. Now bishop to e2, threatening the base of the pawn chain. Queen c3 holds everything together, but I've got queen b1. Bishop to c1, trying to interpose, not allow the queen in anywhere. Bishop to d6, blockading. Queen b2 now, threatening a queen trade. You cannot trade queens, but here you're forced to. You don't want to, but you're forced to. But this endgame should be holdable, but Hans Niemann continues to press. He maneuvers his knight. He maneuvers his bishop, but the bishop trades for the knight, and now he has to break through this fortress. The good thing for Mishra, all his important pawns are on light squares. These pawns are on dark squares, and like your pawn break is here, but that's stupid. So Hans Niemann is going to have to try and break through this structure. He's got that pawn as a target, but black easily defends that. And even if he goes down 2 pawns, Mishra might still be able to hold this. So this should be a fortress, but Magnus Carlsen himself has said he doesn't believe in fortresses. Now we have to ask, does Hans Niemann believe in fortresses? As Mishra just continues to move his bishop back and forth, and there seems to be no way through, but Hans is going to keep trying, keep pressing. A trade of bishops is losing for black in the wrong situation. The white king just can't get close. Look at the bishop, it's being chased around the board. But it gets to f4, not f5. Bishop to e1, king d6. Now we blockade, and we remove the bishop, and we keep going. We keep going. We defend the pawn. It's under attack, we defend it. Now we maneuver the king. Hans Niemann continuing to try and break through. We've gone through hours of play. We're approaching 80 moves. We've now hit 80 moves with bishop to e3 and bishop to a3 as they continue to maneuver the kings, maneuver the bishops. Eventually, the 50 move rule will come into effect. No. Hans Niemann is forced to push a pawn. He plays f4. The 50 move count resets. So after this trade, he can continue to try and press and press and press. A like Herculean effort from both players. Hans Niemann trying to win this, Mishra holding this with everything he can. Just continuing to move pieces around the board. But eventually he manages to hold after bishop to c3. He found a draw by repetition, by threefold repetition. This position had been repeated, and the game ends in a draw after 104 moves and several hours of play. Absolutely incredible. Hans Niemann did everything he could to try and win that game. It just wasn't enough. Incredible defense from Mishra, who now moves to 65 games unbeaten. Now, from the Battle of the Americans, we move to the Battle of the Dutch players, Anish Giri and Jorden van Foreest. Anish Giri said something very interesting. He said, if Gukesh can be world champion, why can't I? Anish Giri is going to try and become world champion, and he plays a ready. And the ready slowly becomes a Queen's Gambit, declined, and a Catalan. And now the Catalan, Magnus Carlsen has said that the Catalan used to be good. We get this early queen trade line, where black's just up a pawn, but you can't really hold it. You give it back. And we get this. This position is an endgame, and you are going to have to maneuver. Look at this. Black can damage the structure, right? If we go back and move. Black can damage the structure and do this. Sorry, you wouldn't move your knight because this would come, and you would hit the rook. So you wouldn't do that just yet. Sorry, I got the move order mixed up. So you move knight e7. Now we trade, and we move the bishop out the way, and now we can fianchetto. And like we get this position, and they maneuver, but it just looked like it was going to be a draw as they continued to trade pieces and got into this endgame. Now, this is not the same endgame as we had in Mishra, Hans Nieman. The pawn structures are different, but it's two bishops versus bishop knight. Now, Mishra traded his bishop for the knight and got into that same color bishop endgame. Are we going to get a similar kind of idea? Opposite colored bishops is a dead draw. Same colored bishops can be winning. But we are going to play bishop versus knight. But in this position, Jorden van Foreest, with 3 minutes on the clock, has one and only one holding move. Everything else is winning for white. He must play knight to f3. Why? He defends the pawn. He attacks this. And Anish Giri has got some choices to make. He can play king to g2. He can play king to e2 because taking it might get your knight trapped. He can, of course, play h3 and h4. And he can ignore everything and play b5 to lock these pawns down on dark squares. Because remember, whenever you take this, you might take it with check, but I can come here, and then you have to loop out. But Jorden van Foreest, after king takes f1, plays knight to c2 and allows b5, locking down the a and the b pawn for black on dark squares. And yes, you have knight to e3 check, king to e2. And now, yes, you attack the bishop and you defend, but I can play bishop to c3. And Anish Giri wins the center pawn, and even though you can trade, he wins another pawn, kicks out the knight, and just marches his 2 pawns down. Everything is locked on the king side, and this game was now just a matter of technique for him, and any trade of the pieces can and should be losing for black as they now go down to this endgame, and it was just hopeless. The pawn pushed forward, and Jorden van Foreest resigned. 53 moves, Anish Giri with a very important win that at the end of this round actually sees him tied for the lead. We move on now to Vincent Keymer and Parham Maghsoodloo. Parham Maghsoodloo, who led for like 3 or 4 rounds. He's playing Vincent Keymer, who scored a beautiful win yesterday, and is looking to go back-to-back. Another ready. It's interesting. And now we get like a Catalan-style position, but you haven't committed the C and the D pawns. But you have got this, and you are probably going to be looking to strike in the center. But because you haven't, black gets away with e5. And you were forced to play e4, and now I can play bishop to c7. And now we have like a Sicilian-esque position almost. After knight to c3, it's almost like you've played a closed Sicilian. Like, I played e4, you played c5, I played, like knight f3 and like in a closed Sicilian manner. d6, d3, bishop to g4. I've seen this position in games of the closed Sicilian. This is a closed Sicilian now. Knight to g5 attacks the bishop, bishop to d7, and here the players could repeat moves. But we get f4. E takes f4, g takes f4. G takes f4, shockingly, is the best move because you're going to build a little wall. Your king's always safe, and you might want to bring the rook. And you just close down this bishop's diagonal from ever helping you. h6 kicks out the knight. Knight retreats back to f3, and now g5. Knight to h2 takes, and we drop the knight back. You might say, wait, hang on, I don't understand. Why aren't we just taking this immediately? You can, but rook g8 comes. And this is under fire. The knight's coming in at certain points. That hangs it immediately. This knight's coming in. It's a really dodgy position. So you first play knight to e2. And now knight h5 defends the pawn for a little bit. But not really. You never had enough. And now you've traded off one of the pieces. Bishop to e6 though. King slides out the way because you're going to need to queen d7. There's almost no way to defend the pawn except for queen to h5, and now long castles. And ladies and gentlemen, from here, someone is going to win and someone is going to lose. I will tell you now for free, I would not like to be white in this position. Reason being, black has already got open lines to your king. You are a couple moves away from creating the same kind of counterplay on the black king. So the engine and I both slightly favor black's position. I favor it slightly more than the engine. The engine thinks white can hold this. And c3 is a good start. And rook dg8 is an inaccuracy, and maybe white's in the game now. Because d4, striking in the center. C takes d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4. We give up the pawn, but we have rook fd1. Rook fd1 loses. It looks a natural move. You attack the knight, and throw at that pawn and the queen, and you've got this coming. The best move in this position is actually to play rook ad1. And you might say, what's the difference? Well, the best move here is queen to a4. Defending the knight, getting out of this small pin, and attacking the rook. And then here, white can play something like b3, attacking the queen, queen to b4, and something like a3, because you're trying to undermine the defense of this knight. And then we get something like queen b6. And this is how the game can develop. And then you've got, various bishops like e3, pinning this knight. This knight's a weakness. It shouldn't have taken the pawn. The problem with rook fd1 is now you don't have to play queen to a4 and get kicked about a bit. You can just play bishop to g5. And you might say, wait, hang on, I don't understand. What if I just take the bishop? Your knight's still hanging. But I've got h takes g5. This incredible move. And now I hit your queen. And your queen is trapped. It has got nowhere to go. It cannot escape. It's trapped. So after bishop to g5, you have to play bishop to g3. And now we've got bishop f6 was played. Bishop e7 was also fine. Bishop to f4, maybe looking for repetition. But king b8. And Vincent Keymer is just winning. And you might say, how? He's only up a pawn. He's positionally better. The white queen is offside. The white rooks don't make an impact. The black pieces are ready to go. And rook g5. Because you can't take. Because h takes g5. And the queen is trapped again. There's nowhere for it to go. So queen to h4 now. Rook g6, queen f2, the queen escapes. But now rook hg8. Rook g3 intercepting. We can trade once and play bishop to e5. Knight f1 seeks to try and hold everything together, but it doesn't. Bishop takes h3. Boom. There was not enough. We sack the rook. But takes. Look at this. We're a move away from creating counterplay, but it's not fast enough. h5. e5 now. Threatening all sorts of problems. I just play bishop takes g2. I remove it, and now I play h4. Which is not quite good enough. The best move here for the cleanest win is queen c6 check. This is the cleanest win. But h4 will do the job. Because you have h4. Queen takes h4 is played, and now we've got d takes e5. Queen e4, f6, king f2, a6, some mistakes in some time pressure. a4 is played because Parham's bust. There's nothing he can do. Rook g4, queen moves over, check here, and Vincent Keymer goes on, and Parham does his best to try and hold this, but he's down lots of pawns. He's down too many pieces. I mean, so he's not down pieces per se. He's got the 2 pieces for the rook, but black's got full pawns. They won everything, and he tries to hold this. He really does. A queen trade is losing for white, so don't even try it. You've got to keep the queen on the board to create counterplay, just like for your own sanity. But the pawns will eventually begin rolling. Eventually, Vincent Keymer finds the right coordination to proceed with, and he marches several pawns down the board. He keeps in contact with the rook, and the game ends with queen to h1, because you're actually just getting mated into, because it's here. And if bishop here, if bishop g1, queen f3, mate. A beautiful, beautiful game from Vincent Keymer. and he moves to the top of the standings. We now go to board 2. One of the leaders, Matthias Bluebaum, facing off against one of the hometown heroes, I think, Nordbek Abdusatorov. e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, a Petrov defense. And unfortunately, this is a drawish opening, but we've seen already in this tournament how it can be used to be very exciting. But d3 is not a move you see a lot. So this could be a very exciting game or a very boring game, as we see a system you don't often see in the Petrov. We've got this fianchetto, we get the damaged structure. This doesn't look like a Petrov position, I'm not gonna lie. But look at Nordbek, the way he plays this, it's really nice. Matthias Bluebaum has equalized the position. It's definitely perfectly holdable for black. Like, d3 is not a serious try for advantage, so it was interesting to see this from Nordbek. I don't think you will see this often as he marches his pawns forward and really takes up space. And look at he's half an hour up on the clock. But the position's level, and actually the engine kind of prefers black at various points. And you also got just like knight f5 sometimes to put pressure on this pin. Or you can just play f5 yourself. Queen c3, f4. The knight drops back, and now we bring the knight to f5, knight to d2, knight to d4. Look at this. But we trade, bishop to g6, and we trade, queen here, rook slides over, and you're trying to push the pawns. You really are, as everything, look at this, like Alekhine's gun of sort, all on the f-file, but there's nothing you can really do to break in, so we trade off some pawns. The queen and the rooks infiltrate, but there's nothing really here, and queen takes e6 was played, and a draw offer. And draw accepted, because what would have happened is you would have taken here. We would have got something like rook a7, and this game would have been a draw, because these two pawns would have traded off. I would have won one, you would have won the other, and these two pawns would have traded off, and the game ends in a draw. Which means there is one final game we must turn our attention to. Nihal Sarin versus GM Alireza Firouzja. Battle for top of the standings. If Alireza wins this, he's caught up to the leaders. So Nihal needs just a draw, because Bluebaum drew. So a draw keeps him tied with Bluebaum, and Anish Giri has caught them. So a win takes him half a point clear, but a draw means he's near the top. A draw means that he will be near the top. So we get this interesting Sicilian. A little bit offbeat Sicilian, I would say. Like, I say offbeat, right? So you've got e4, c5, c3, Alpine Sicilian. Knight f6 is one of the key moves, and you induce e5. It's almost played like an Alekhine of sorts, an Aljokhin's defense, and we get en passant early. We attack the bishop has to retreat, and now we get this. And this is such an interesting position. And I don't know why you would go for this. Like, the Alpine is traditionally known as like a drawing weapon against the Sicilian. It's like an anti-Sicilian system, and it's what you play when your opponent's playing for a win, or, to fight. But I just don't understand what was going on here. Like, so it just looks like here, Nihal Sarin loses his mind and hangs a knight, right? That's what it looks like, because we get e6, knight under attack. We don't do anything about it. We just leave the knight to die. But f4 was the key idea, because you have to go queen f6, and now there's queen e2. And the whole thing that Nihal is counting on is the fact that he's got this bishop, the king's stuck in the center, and I will just get the material back. I'm now threatening this, so bishop takes is getting the knight back. But what about knight d7? White's better, but you're down a piece. g4 comes. Okay, queen to h4. Knight d6 check. Okay, king has to move to f8. Bishop to c5. But h5. You can't take that. Bishop takes c6, and now b6. Beautiful move, by the way. Because you can't take. Because knight f5 is devastating. Because it's check and you lose the queen. So actually, beautiful move here, bishop takes c6, because you're forced to just play b6. So Nihal Sarin's got the piece back, and he's probably better, actually. Like, I've condemned him for playing this way, and the tactics were insane, but he does get the piece back. And b6 is a slight mistake from Alireza. The best move here is to play h takes g4, because you create immediate counterplay. Because you're not worried about, like, bishop takes again, because you'll just trade everything. So even if you get, like, bishop takes a7, which kind of attacks the rook, now you can play this. Because if you come back, then what? And then if you take here, then I take here. And I'm actually fine with this as black. So b6 was a bit unnecessary. Sorry, b6, give the board a second. But knight takes c8 is a bit premature, because now I take with the rook, and you've got two bishops hanging. So bishop f2 hits the queen, so you can avoid both bishops hanging, but take. I force off a queen trade. You save your other bishop by hitting the rook, but rook slides over. And even though you win that, I can now get my bishop out the way. And black is actually the one, when you get to this position, black is the one that's favored. Knight takes f4 could have been played, but we play b5. Like, look at this position. It's meant to be 0-0-0. How do you even look at this position? You've got this random black pawn, which is under fire, which can be taken, but you relinquish control of key squares. That can be taken. You've got this rook staring down here. You've got this rook staring down here. You've got this stoner staring into open space and defending this. You've got this rook, which is not doing much at all, so you probably have to go here to defend both. You've got this beautiful bishop here, but no real targets. You've got this pawn versus these two. You've got these three pawns versus this one, and this one is just going to have to maybe be distracted by that one. And you've got this thing. And both players have less than a minute on the clock to make another, like, 10 moves. This should be fun. Bishop takes g6, b4 now, looking to damage the pawn structure. We get rook a7, now b takes c3, d takes c3, and rook h e8. c4, knight takes on f4, c5, knight to d3, bishop to e3, well played, rook to d5, and here you're almost out the woods. A couple more moves and you'll be fine. There is some increment, but here, unfortunately, Nihal Sarin plays bishop to f3, which loses the game on the spot to rook e5. You might say, wait, I don't understand. Why does that lose on the spot? Okay, I don't want to go here or here to lose my bishop. What if I just go here? You'll lose to rook g5 check, of many things. Firstly, so not bishop d4. Okay, what if I just go here? What's so wrong about this? Well, then I've got rook takes c5. And still problems here, and you're just going to be down a pawn. Yeah, so bishop f3 not a good move, because rook e5. Bishop to d2, rook takes c5. All that happened in the game. Rook, king h1, rook c2 now. Where's your bishop going? Back to e3, rook h8. How are you defending everything? Bishop to g1, beautiful move. But rook h8. h4 rather, not h8. Rook a4, looking to trade, which would give white some chances. I'm not afraid. Rook takes a4. I'll let you have that outside pass pawn with bishops that can support it from a distance. Because I can play rook a2. Bishop c6 defends the pawn temporarily. I've got bishop e5. Now rook f3, necessary defensive move. But rook knight to f4. Bishop e5, f5. Bishop to c5, rook c2. And Alireza Firouzja goes on and he plays a beautiful, beautiful endgame. He keeps everything nice and together. He moves his knight to a beautiful e4 square. You can see how he's pushed his pawns. His bishop is doing a great job. He just has to worry about this. That's it. This pawn will look to create some damage to the structure to try and open lines for white. White is going to rely on this pawn causing black to give up some material or perpetual check. Bishop to c6, bishop to g3. But the rook slides over, and now bishop to f2, and Nihal Sarin's back in the game. If he plays bishop d8 check, which he does find. king e5 now, and bishop to c7, king f6, bishop to d8, king to g7, and here it's actually very simple. You just play bishop to g5. No, sorry, you don't play bishop to g5. Bishop to g5 is what's played in the game. The best move here is to play rook b7 check. And then if king to h6, then you can play bishop takes e4 and damage this. And this is how Nihal Sarin could have drawn the game. Instead, he played bishop to g5 without giving the check. What that means is now I can play knight takes e5, knight takes g5, h takes g5, and bishop to h4. Now, when you give the check, I don't have to come forward. I can go to f8. And even though it looks threatening, I can get out the way of the discoveries because there's nothing useful for them. And even though I lose this, I've got check, and I've got the bishop coming in. And I'm up a pawn, and it is going to be enough for Alireza Firouzja as long as he doesn't blunder again and he manages to push his pawns through and all the way through, and rook d7, and now it is mate on the board. f2 ends the game. Alireza Firouzja defeats Nihal Sarin. Incredible. The top 5 boards were incredible. So now, ladies and gentlemen, who's actually leading this thing? Well, as he checks notes, we've got a 4-way tie for first. Matthias Bluebaum of Germany, Alireza Firouzja of France, Vincent Keymer of Germany, and Anish Giri of the Netherlands. But they are not the only players we need to talk about, because there are another 7 players, half a point behind, that are going to be in contention. So that's what I was saying. The top 5, top 6 boards are all in contention. Half a point is not much, but you're going to have to go 2 for 2. All those players are Abhimanyu Mishra, Arjun Erigaisi, Nordjabek Abdusatorov, Nihal Sarin, Hans Nieman, Maxim Vasilgrav, Yu Yangi. And that's it. Yeah. Mishra, Arjun, Nordjabek, Nihal, Hans, MVL, Yu Yangi. Parham Maghsoodloo, who led for so many rounds, suffers 2 quick defeats and is probably out the running. Because 2 wins gets him to 7.5. That's 2 draws for Matthias Bluebaum and the other leaders. So very, very interesting times. The last 2 rounds are going to be insane.